The hallway was silent, except for the thud of two bodies hitting the cold, tiled floor. She stood there, unmoving, her fists clenched, her breath visible in the icy air inside the school. All eyes were on her, this small girl in a black dress, white tights, and boots, her coat half torn, her eyes blazing with something deeper than anger. She didn't say a word. Because she didn't need to. Backstory: 2 weeks earlier, Maya was the kind of girl most people overlooked. At 9 years old, she wasn't loud or flashy. She kept her head down, her notebooks neat, and her heart quiet. Since her mom passed away the previous year, she hadn't said much to anyone outside of her family. She used to be more open, more talkative. But grief has a way of putting locks on the loudest voices. She lived with her father, who worked 2 jobs to keep the house warm in the winter. Every morning, she'd put on her mother's old black coat, tailored for a woman much taller, but cinched tightly with a belt to make it fit. It smelled faintly of lavender and old books. It was the last thing her mother had wrapped around her before the hospital took her away. To Maya, the coat wasn't just fabric. It was a shield. The bullies. At school, there were always whispers. About her hair, her silence, the coat that looked too big, too old, or too dramatic. But Maya learned to ignore it, until one particular group of kids stopped whispering and started laughing loud enough for her to hear. Jake and Lana were the loudest. Jake was the kind of boy who thrived on control. Everything about him screamed confidence: slick hair, perfect sneakers, loud jokes. Lana was colder. She never needed to raise her voice, her gaze alone could make others shrink. Together, they ran the hallway like it was their personal stage. And Maya? She was just an easy target. The incident: winter break approaches. The week before winter break, the school felt colder than usual. The heating system had failed in parts of the building, and kids were wearing gloves in the classroom. Maya didn't mind. She had her coat. She never took it off, except at lunch, when she'd quietly place it on her lap while eating alone. One day, Jake called out across the cafeteria. "Hey, Dracula! Got anything new under that Crypt Keeper coat?" Laughter erupted. Maya felt her face burn. She said nothing. She just stood, dumped her tray, and walked away. But that only made them push harder. The breaking point. Friday morning. It was snowing hard. Buses were delayed. Teachers hadn't arrived yet, and kids were packed in the hallways waiting for classes to start. Maya stood in her usual corner, reading her book, trying to make herself invisible. Then Jake and Lana appeared. Lana leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Bet she sleeps in that thing." Jake grinned. "Let's find out." Maya backed up, gripping her book. "Don't touch me." But Jake already had his hands on the coat. Lana grabbed the other side. "Let go!" Maya shouted, but they yanked. In one swift tug, the coat slipped off her shoulders and fell to the floor. A ripple of gasps moved through the hallway. Not because Maya was exposed, but because she suddenly didn't look small anymore. She looked unshakable. The slam, turning point. Something inside her cracked. Not in a way that broke her, but in a way that unchained everything she had been holding back. Maya stepped forward, kicked her coat toward the wall, and without another word, shoved Jake hard. He stumbled, caught off guard, slipped on the wet tile, and fell. Lana stepped forward with a smirk. "Ooh, scary." Before she could finish, Maya twisted, used her shoulder, and brought Lana down with controlled, surprising force. It wasn't messy or violent, it was intentional. Like she knew exactly how to defend herself. The hallway was silent. Jake groaned, trying to stand. Lana stared at the ceiling, dazed. Maya walked over, calmly picked up her coat, brushed it off, and put it back on. Then, looking straight ahead, she walked past the crowd like nothing had happened. Aftermath, the rise. The school buzzed with rumors all week. No one knew Maya had been training with her uncle, a former self-defense instructor, for months. Her father insisted on it after an incident at the grocery store when a man followed her home. She had never used the skills before. She never thought she'd have to. But that day, when they tried to take the last thing she had of her mother, she didn't hesitate. The principal called her into the office. Maya thought she might be suspended. But instead, the principal just said, "You didn't start the fight. You ended it." Jake and Lana were given detention and counseling. And oddly, from that point forward, the school changed. Not because of fear, but because of respect. Other kids started sitting with Maya at lunch, asking about her books. One girl even brought her an extra lavender-scented pin to clip on her coat. Ending, final message. Maya didn't become loud. She didn't start shouting or showing off. She still wore her mother's coat every day. Still kept her head down, but her chin up. And whenever someone asked her what changed that day, she would simply say, "They thought I was weak because I was quiet. But they didn't know my silence had armor." Because bravery doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, it's dressed in a hand-me-down coat, walking straight through the storm. Over the weekend, Maya stayed mostly quiet at home. Her father noticed the slight change in her walk, how she no longer hunched her shoulders or avoided eye contact. Over dinner, he finally asked, "Everything okay at school?" Maya nodded. He waited, knowing she rarely opened up easily. Then she simply said, "I wore Mom's coat. Someone tried to take it from me. They didn't succeed." Her father didn't ask for details. He just nodded, eyes glassy, and said, she'd be proud. That night, Maya hung the coat carefully on the hook by the door, not because she was done with it, but because she had finally earned it in a way that felt complete. The isolation that follows strength. Monday came with whispers again, but this time, they weren't cruel. They said she took Jake down in 2 seconds. "I heard she's like, trained or something." She didn't even blink. Maya had always wished to disappear. But now, attention followed her like a shadow. Some of the popular kids tried to befriend her. Lana didn't look her in the eye anymore. Jake avoided her altogether. And surprisingly, it wasn't satisfying. Not entirely. Because even after the slam, Maya still felt alone. Connection, a friend appears. On Wednesday, a girl sat beside Maya at lunch. Her name was Priya, bright eyes, crooked glasses, and a stutter that made others ignore her. "I saw what you did," she said softly. Thank you." Maya blinked. "For what?" Priya smiled gently. "For showing them, we're not broken just because we're quiet." It was the first time someone had spoken to Maya not about the fight, but about who she was. From that day on, they shared lunches. Priya would talk about art, music, and her fear of singing in front of others. Maya listened, encouraged her, and one afternoon even said, "You know, your voice is kind of beautiful." The friendship healed something inside both of them. Lana's return, the human side of a bully. One afternoon, Maya found Lana waiting for her by the lockers. Her posture wasn't confrontational. She held something in her hand, Maya's belt, the one from her coat. It had fallen off during the fight. "I've had this since that day," Lana said, handing it over. "I didn't return it because I didn't know how to say sorry." Maya took the belt, her expression unreadable. "You were right to fight back," Lana added. I didn't realize you were hurting too. I thought mocking other people would make me feel less broken." There it was again, broken. Maya, for the first time, looked Lana in the eye. "We're all broken," she said. "Some of us just choose not to break others in the process." Lana nodded. It wasn't a friendship in the making. But it was closure. The workshop, turning pain into power. A few weeks later, Maya was called to the principal's office. Not for trouble this time, but for an invitation. "We're starting a self-defense and empowerment workshop," the principal said. "We'd like you to help lead it." Maya's first instinct was to say no. But then she thought of Priya. Of other kids in the school walking those halls with their heads down, hearts heavy, afraid to speak or be seen. She accepted. Each Thursday afternoon, Maya stood in front of 10 students, boys and girls, and taught them how to stand tall. How to say no with their bodies. How to protect themselves if ever the world pushed too hard. At first, her voice trembled. But week by week, her confidence grew. By the end of the semester, the workshop had grown to 30 students. Even Jake attended one quietly, stayed in the back, but never mocked again. Final chapter, the speech. On the last day of school before summer, the principal announced a surprise student speaker during assembly. Maya's name was called. The gym fell quiet as she stepped up to the mic, wearing her mother's coat with the belt fastened perfectly. "I used to believe strength was loud," she said. "That it looked like fists or shouting. But strength sometimes looks like surviving. Like showing up even when you don't want to. Like wearing your pain in the open and not letting it be used against you." She paused, the silence respectful. "I didn't fight that day to win. I fought so they wouldn't take the last piece of my mother from me. And I didn't expect it, but in doing that, I got a piece of myself back too." The entire gym rose to their feet. Closing message, the moral. Maya's story didn't end in a fight, it began there. What started as self-defense became self-discovery. What began in loneliness gave birth to leadership. The hallway where she once shrank now echoed with voices she helped empower. She still walked quietly. But now, she walked with a purpose. Because when life strips away what matters most, your silence, your voice, your coat, what you do next writes your real story.